My new babysitting job seemed perfect until I read the third rule. I can't stop hearing it. 3 thuds, deep in my bones, from the other side of a door that should not have had anyone behind it. It's been almost a week, and my hands are still shaking. I just need to write this down, get it out of my head. Maybe if I see the words, I can convince myself it was just an old house making old house noises. So, I'm a student, and I babysit to keep from eating ramen 7 nights a week. It's usually easy money. I put some kid to bed, do my homework, get paid. I've got a few regulars, but I needed something steady. When a family I'd never heard of contacted me for a standing gig every Friday, 6 p.m. to midnight, for a rate that was almost double what I usually make, I said yes without even thinking. The first red flag, looking back, was that they didn't want to meet me first. No interview, no references, just an address and a time. I told myself they were just busy professionals, probably desperate. Rich people can be weird like that. Their house is a 20-minute drive out of town, where the streetlights give up. It's one of those ancient Victorian things with a pointed roof and too many windows, like a half-rotten gingerbread house. The kind of place that looks elegant in a photo, but oppressive in person. It looms. The woman who opened the door, Elspeth, had a smile that was just a shape her mouth made. It didn't touch her eyes. God, her eyes. They were hollowed out, the skin underneath them bruised and thin. She looked like she hadn't had a real night's sleep in a decade. Her husband, Alistair, stood behind her. Tall, stiff, with a perfectly ironed shirt and a jaw that looked like it was clenched tight enough to crack teeth. They weren't the relaxed, cool parents I'd pictured. They were brittle. Alistair didn't bother with greetings. He just led me to the kitchen, a cold, sterile room with steel countertops that reflected the fluorescent lights. He gestured for me to sit at the table and slid a single, yellowed piece of notepaper toward me. It was covered in a spidery, archaic script. He read the rules aloud, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. 1. Our son Ori must be in his bed with the light off by 9:00 p.m. This is not negotiable. 2. The door at the end of the hall remains shut. You will not approach it. You will not touch it. You will not touch it. For your purposes, it does not exist. 3. Should Ori mention his shadow friend, you will not acknowledge it. Change the subject. I tried a little laugh. I thought maybe it was some weird, elaborate joke. Shadow friend, got it. They just stared. The silence stretched until it was humming. We understand each other, Alistair said. It wasn't a question. He then folded the paper once, precisely, and tucked it into a drawer full of silverware that glinted like surgical tools. That's when I saw the kid. Ori. Peeking around the doorframe. He was tiny for his age, maybe 7 or 8, with a mop of dark hair and these huge dark eyes that just watched. I expected Elspeth or Alistair to say something, to introduce us, to tell him to be good. Nothing. They grabbed their coats from a hook by the door. Elspeth didn't even look at her son. They just walked out, and the lock clicked behind them with a heavy, final sound. They were gone. Like they were escaping a fire. I turned to Ori and gave him my best, friendliest smile. He didn't smile back. He just slipped back behind the wall. A wave of something cold and ugly washed over me. What kind of parents just leave their kid with a stranger without a single word of comfort? No goodbye, no hug. Poor little guy. It took a while to coax him out. We played with some building blocks on the living room floor. He was quiet, methodical, building tall, spindly towers, and then looking at them with a kind of dissatisfaction. He didn't talk much, just watched me, like he was trying to figure something out. The house was so quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but heavy quiet, the kind that absorbs sound. Every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hall, felt loud and intrusive. Around 8:30, he started to change. He'd stop what he was doing and just listen. His head would tilt and his eyes would dart down the long, dim hallway, toward the door. The one I was supposed to pretend didn't exist. It was thick, dark wood with no handle on our side, just a heavy-looking deadbolt. "What's up, buddy?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He looked at me, and his voice was a tiny whisper, like he was afraid of being overheard. "He gets hungry after the clock sings." My stomach tightened into a knot. "Who does?" "The shadow friend," he said, and then immediately looked away, picking up a block and staring at it like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I remembered the rule. I didn't push. But the air in the room felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. I got him upstairs and into bed. As I was reading him some story about a cartoon bear, he reached out and his small, cold fingers closed around my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong, desperate. "Will you make sure the door stays shut?" he whispered, his eyes wide and pleading in the dim light of his bedside lamp. Safe from what? I wanted to ask. But his fear was so real, so raw, it felt contagious. "Of course, Ori," I managed, forcing my lips into a smile. "That's my job." After he finally drifted off, I went downstairs and sank into the sofa. The fire Alistair had lit earlier was now just a pile of pulsing red embers. I pulled my phone out, scrolling through social media, trying to numb my brain with stupid videos. That's when I heard the first sound. A scrape. Long and slow. The sound of something rough, like jagged fingernails, being dragged down the other side of the basement door. I froze. My thumb stopped moving. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I told myself it was the house settling. Wood warping. Anything. And then it came. Thud. A deep, resonant impact against the door. Not a knock. It was heavier than that. Like someone had thrown their shoulder against the wood. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, staring down the dark hallway at the door. Every nerve in my body was screaming. Thud. It was slower this time. More deliberate. I could feel the vibration in the floorboards. My mind was racing. Maybe Alistair had come home and was using a back entrance, but there was no sound of a car. No footsteps outside. This was coming from inside, from below. Thud. The third one was the loudest. It was a sound of pure, frustrated force. And with it came a feeling. A palpable wave of cold that washed through the living room, raising goosebumps all over my skin. The air grew thick and heavy with the smell of damp earth and something else, something sweet and rotten, like old meat. I wanted to run. I wanted to grab Ori and get the hell out of that house. But I was paralyzed. Glued to the sofa, my eyes locked on that door, waiting, expecting the wood to splinter. But then, nothing. The silence returned, heavier than before. The smell faded. The cold receded. It was over. I don't know how long I sat there. It felt like hours. When the headlights finally swept across the living room window, I almost screamed with relief. Elspeth and Alistair came in, and it was like they were walking into a different house. They didn't ask how the night was. They didn't ask if Ori was okay. Alistair walked straight to me, handed me a thick fold of cash, and said, "We'll see you next Friday." I wanted to say something, to tell them about the noise, about the smell, but the look on their faces, about the smell. But the look on their faces, it was a blank wall. They knew. Of course they knew. They weren't paying me to ask questions. They were paying me to sit there and endure it. I just nodded, grabbed my bag, and practically ran to my car. I can't stop thinking about it, about the look in Ori's eyes, about that awful heavy sound. I know how this sounds. I sound crazy. It was an old house. Pipes rattle. Furnaces make noise. But it wasn't that. This was different. This felt alive. It felt like something was down there in the dark, and it knew I was on the other side of that door. And it was angry. Part of me, the rational part, is screaming that Ori has an overactive imagination, that his parents are just weirdly strict, and that I let a creepy house get to me. But I am so fucking scared to go back. Please, someone tell me I'm overreacting. Tell me it's just a house. Because I have to go back on Friday, and I don't know what I'll do if I hear that sound again.